Welcome once again to Leading Edge. I'm your host, Jeff Smith. Coming up in just a little bit, it's the house that love built. And regardless of the economy or what's happening in the world, the mission doesn't change. But I'll tell you what, the ways in which they go about providing services to the people who need them the most gets better and better. And we'll focus on the mission of the Ronald McDonald House Charities of Northwest Ohio in just a bit. But first, when I was growing up, and when many of you were growing up, MTV, it was all about music. It was about seeing those bands you heard on the radio in action, and some of them, they were playing instruments in the videos, and it was in a concert setting. Others, you found, well, some of the members could actually act in these music videos, but then something happened to MTV. It became a major network with entertainment other than music videos. And one of those shows became a huge hit. Well, today, we've got one of the stars from one of those shows right here on Leading Edge.
Well, coming up September 9th at Stranahan Theatre here in Toledo, we will be visited by none other than Steve O of Jackass fame. He is coming fresh off the release of his latest book entitled, and bear with me here, A Hard Kick in the What I've Learned from a Lifetime of Terrible Decisions. Steve O joining us. Thank you for taking the time. What should the Toledo audience expect in a couple of weeks?
Well, thank you for taking the time. And the Toledo audience should brace themselves and leave the kids at home. I say that quite literally. It would be illegal for children to be in attendance because this show is so wildly explicit by design, too. I really wanted to make a show that pushed the boundaries way further than I ever could with Jackass. And that's exactly what I did. I filmed things that are just really, really intense. And the way that the show works, it's called the bucket list. And what the bucket list is all of these forbidden stunts. And the show represents a journey through the list of forbidden stunts. And after each bit in the show, I screen the footage of the culmination of the bit. And the theme of it is it's a wild love story, because for me to carry out these life-threatening and in some cases actually XXX rated stunts, there simply were going to be implications on my relationship. And there were. The show actually goes in order of escalating distress on behalf of my fiance.
So it's not only a stand-up, but you are also exhibiting some of these things that made you famous through your history with Jackass.
Yeah, all of my worlds converge. I've been performing live comedy now for 13 years. I did 11 years on the comedy club circuit before graduating to big theaters. And all of my worlds have converged. So you get the Too Hot for Jackass bits presented on a huge video screen. And it's all packed together into just an insane live comedy show.
I wanted to ask you, I was looking, and it looks like you have either celebrated a 50th birthday this year, or you are getting ready to pretty soon, or is it next year? And
it'll be next year.
It'll be next year. And I was struck by something you have said in some of your books, and you wanted to apologize to all the people who had taken out bets over the years that celebrity death poll, that they would win money for you, and that you have defied death so many times. But I also, I guess I wanted to form this into a question, Steve-O, and just ask you, has your life, has there always been that thought that you would find the best possible way of going out? You've talked about fame, how important fame was to you, but as each of these stunts has doing, like, I could go out doing this, or I could go out doing stand-up comedy. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, it depends on what you mean by going out. I've certainly not
defying death.
Defying death. Yeah, I mean, I don't spend a lot of time contemplating how I might die. That's for sure. Um, and I love what you said. You know, your reference to um, my apologizing to all the people who I cost fortunes. I think I was a real uh, big big bet on celebrity death pool. Nobody expected Steve-O to make it, and here I am. You're right. Yeah, next year it'll be 50. I've just turned 49 in June, and you know, I think everything I do in life is driven by an overdeveloped need for attention. I consider myself a world class attention, and you know, as far as character defects go, um, I think I kind of stumbled onto a good one because we could argue that attention is the most valuable commodity known to man, and I've got a real knack for garnering it.
Hey, I gotta bring up something else. I find it funny. Sometimes when we get superintendents or we get police chiefs that are on the go, they will stop, they will do interviews in their vehicle. Where do we find you today?
Um, this is in. I am currently sitting in my podcast studio van. It's the Class B motorhome in which I film the majority of episodes of my Wild Ride podcast. We've had epic guests in here. To name a few: Mike Tyson, Post Malone, Tommy Lee. I mean, the list goes on and on. They just sit right in the back of this cramped little van, and we do these great interviews. It's fun.
I watched the video today of you giving the tattoo to Post Malone and then him turning the favor and giving you the
That
tattoo after that.
that happened in the van I'm
Right.
sitting in right now.
So for our viewers, who is Steve-O? Who is Stephen Glover?
It's a great question, man. I live a double life. Is very very much. I live a double life, and it's important that I do because I just have to have separation between these two, between the persona of Steve-O and the reality of Stephen Glover. Um, and then when I was just mentioning my podcast, I think that the podcast really blurs the line because when you're spending an hour or so every week of just unedited, raw, unfiltered, it would be really hard to maintain a facade, you know. So I think the real me kind of comes out on the podcast a lot, and the line gets blurry. And I think that as a guy in recovery, there are a lot of things that are not okay for Stephen Glover to be doing, which are perfectly okay for Steve-O. You know, Steve-O will find himself in handcuffs, locked up in a jail cell, and that's par for the course. Stephen Glover is a little bit more law abiding and considerate of others.
When we come back, we continue our conversation. We talk mental health, we talk addiction and recovery with Steve-O. Stay with us. Welcome back here on Leading Edge for this week. In a few moments, we're going to have Chad Bringman from Ronald McDonald House Charities of Northwest Ohio. But first, I continue my conversation with Steve-O about the dedication pages in his books and why he wrote what he did.
I was really struck too, and I got to give you credit. Both dedications that I read in some of your memoir and also this latest book kind of shared the same sentiment. And the first one, this book is dedicated to everyone that I crapped all over for telling me exactly what I needed to hear when I didn't want to hear it. That sounds like somebody who's maturing.
I would say so, man. I mean, definitely. When I first got sober, the people who I gave the hardest time to were the people who went out of their way to help me and love me the most. I think we hurt the people who are closest to us the most. And it's the people who love me the most who told me the things I didn't want to hear and felt my wrath. So
You
I
think
think that
that's
dedication.
you think that's why you're still here today?
I love, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Tough love. I needed a lot of tough love, and I needed really tough love.
As we're wrapping up here, and I wanted to touch on something that we've had a lot of coverage of, obviously a news organization here in little old Toledo, Ohio, but we've talked a lot about the struggles with mental health, especially among our youth. You talk a lot about sobriety and how important that is to you over the last decade plus, and therapy. You've touched on that as well. Your thoughts about what, you know, I guess people coming to be more attentive to their mental health these days and how important that is.
Um, yeah, I mean, there's a certainly an entire universe of mental health issues, and I don't purport to be any kind of an expert in mental health, but I know that for me, 12-step recovery has trained me to speak about what's bothering me. I think that's the most important thing. Whatever your issues are, being vocal about them. It takes a lot of power out of things that are bothering you. Speaking up and um, just being honest and taking accountability is probably the biggest thing. I think that it's pretty rare in this world for people to admit when they're wrong, and that's counterintuitive because that's the best way I think to earn someone's respect is to step up and admit when you're wrong.
And
And it
finally, you call this a book of wisdom.
Yeah. Oh, well, my latest book really it's kind of a half joke and half serious. That you've got a book of wisdom coming from Steve O. And the reality is that it's kind of surprising that a lot of it is legitimately hard-earned wisdom. And yeah, I'm just really grateful for everything that I've been through. Somebody asked me, what would I want to change? And yeah, my answer is just I don't want to mess with the space-time continuum that I learned about in Back to the Future, because I'm very grateful for where I am.
So leave the kids at home, but I'll give you the last seconds to give your best pitch to get people in those seats at the Stranahan Theatre.
Hey, man, I'm like literally people in the audience at the shows on this tour routinely pass out. I'm not making that up. We average at least a guy per show, mostly dudes. And every show I give a very, very stern warning and a legal like what like
Like a
waiver.
CYA moment, huh?
But you are here at your own risk, and I'm not responsible for anybody who passes out. Just please stay in your seat so you don't pass out while you're standing. But yeah, there are at least 3 of the video vignettes that are shockingly graphic enough to make people pass out, and odds are that's going to happen in Toledo.
Steve O, he's in Toledo, September 9th at the Stranahan Theatre. Thank you so much for spending some time with us. Good luck to you, sir.
Hey, likewise. I look forward to it, man. Thank you.
Absolutely. Peace.
Once again, Steve O, he shows up in Toledo September 9th over at the Stranahan. When we come back, you've driven past it hundreds of times, but when we return, sharing the numbers of the people helped by the Ronald McDonald House. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Its mission is to be a home away from home for families whose kids are receiving inpatient or outpatient medical care. Ronald McDonald House Charities of Northwest Ohio. You ready for this? Saw more than 350 guests last year, serving 55 counties and a total of 5,043 family nights at the facility. The average nights per stay equated to the equivalent of about 2 weeks, and the longest stay of the year encompassed nearly 5 months. And none of that happens without donations and a lot of heart going into the house that love built. This past week, Ronald McDonald House Charities of Northwest Ohio and ProMedica eBay Children's Hospital announced the Ronald McDonald Care Mobile Unit. We're going to get to all that with Chad Bringman, Executive Director, joining us here today. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
We are also coming off of one of your guys' charity events throughout the course of the year. You had a huge golf outing, very successful, except not successful in the video that we ran showing me how bad my golf swing is. But Chad, talk about the importance of the support that you get throughout the community.
You know, you just went through a bunch of statistics that are really important. And it's important to know, too, that those families all stay free of charge. And the only reason it's free of charge is we live in a great community that supports, you know, we have events, yes, but individual donations, people rounding up when they go to McDonald's, just all sorts of ways. But it allows us to be able to allow those families to come on the worst day of their life. In the case of the Ronald McDonald House, show up to this place they've heard of before but not sure what to expect. Our staff do a great job of making sure that they're comfortable because their only job needs to be and should be getting that child better.
This is one of those things we're reminded of the Ronald McDonald House and the mission at different times of the year. But this, regardless of, like I said at the onset of the show, regardless of where the economy is, this is a 365-day mission job for you guys to go out and be able to do what you do.
Yep, that's right. So the mission has to continue no matter what, and being flexible during pandemic, being flexible during times where the economy maybe isn't as strong, is certainly, you know, creates a different level of challenge for us, but we need to make sure those families are taken care of. And the only thing they're doing is coming to Toledo for medical care and, trying to figure out where they're going to stay, where they're going to eat, et cetera. So we've got to be there.
And over the years, obviously, you've had to expand programming. You've been able, let's put it that way, you've been able to expand programming. And just this past week, a big announcement as far as more of that programming.
Yep, that's right. And you just alluded to the fact that the growth has been unbelievable. You know, we went from an 8,000 square foot house just 7 years ago into a 38,000 square foot house to serve hundreds more. But now this Care Mobile, which really is an extension of the mission. And when you think Ronald McDonald House and that core program, you know, how does a Care Mobile fit into that? But what it really is, when you look at the mission itself and you think about why is the house there? And the house is there so that families have access to medical care. And then you start to deep dive into that strategically and you start saying, well, if access to care is really what we're about, what does access to care need to look like beyond just the Ronald McDonald House? So the Care Mobile is intended to and will go into communities where maybe access is a challenge, bring that access right to the streets where people live, get them on a long-term healthcare journey. But that's where our smart folks at eBay Children's are going to be on the vehicle working with folks with the clinical piece.
Right.
Our job is to just help identify where those pockets are at, work alongside of those folks. And then we're also going to look at some program, I'll call them add-ons in the back end, where when we go into communities and maybe food insecurity is an issue, maybe mental health is an issue, and what type of additional programming can we offer, and what other organizations can we partner with when we're in those communities as well?
And that's, I'll tell you what, that's one of the things over the last few years, we have really come in touch with the stories of how these health organizations in the Toledo area are really looking at those deserts that exist and quality of life improvements that can be had. The stretch from getting out into those communities, and you just touched on it. So mobile units like this, really essential to doing that.
Yeah, we're really excited just because we know the impact is going to be significant. And day one when we get out, those are kids that maybe should have been on a healthcare journey in the past. Maybe they're on one, but it's been a little bit of time. But for us to be able to think about the impact we can have, literally putting the wheels on the ground, getting into those communities that we've been able to kind of study for the last couple of years and see where those are at, for us to be able to go in and make an impact really is something that the community is going to be proud of.
And something I wanted you to, I guess, have a moment for as well is, regardless of the ebbs and flows as far as how the Toledo economy, the nation's economy is going, Ronald McDonald House is still, in Ronald McDonald House Charities of Northwest Ohio, still one of those organizations that's on the front burner for a lot of industries around Toledo. And I think to the Dana Open and some of the funding that comes through that as well.
Yeah, we're very fortunate for the Dana Open and the support that we get. And you bring up a good point that as the economy ebbs and flows, or as inflation even ebbs and flows, that inflation affects us as well, right? You know, everything we're purchasing for the families, the food, the utilities, all the repair work that needs to be done on the house, et cetera. So we feel that impact as well. But again, our board does a great job. Our staff do a great job to, we keep costs under control the best we can as well, too. But our board, our staff do a great job of helping navigate and being a little bit flexible and ebb and flowing and the words that you use. But it's all about evolving to kind of what we need to be. Because at the end of the day, we need to know that the house is there, everything works, all that kind of stuff. Food is in the refrigerator, that's right. And it's a challenge at times. I remember thinking back to, 2008, 2009 during that recession and the impact that had on the organization. We were able to weather that fairly well. So we live in a great community that's supportive of our mission. Supportive of a lot of things, and we're grateful for that.
In our last 30 seconds, we are heading into September. How does the rest of quarter 4 shake down for you guys?
Through the year, we've held our own. There's been a couple of categories where, special events, people aren't quite out as much, although the golf outing was well attended and did very, very well earlier in the year. That was a little bit of a challenge. But where we do see great support is organizational giving and individual giving. So, people are still supporting us on a regular basis. The addition of Roundup, when you go through McDonald's, now you can round up your order. That's really just
I'm fascinated by how much money is made off of that.
It's a great thing. It's really, I don't want to say replacing the canisters, because the canisters are still there, but as we go into a less cash society, we're watching that switch.
Chad, great to have you here.
Great
Thank
to have
you.
you.
We'll be right back. Welcome back for a final time. Hope you enjoyed our conversations here today. As always, if you missed any part of our interviews, go to the WTOL YouTube page.